And this really drives me crazy because the truth is, organic pesticides are still pesticides. So this is my face when that happens, and I just say this is dumb. It drives me crazy. That's just the reality of using any pesticide, organic or not. What about these folks? What about grounding? I've talked to people, they swear by using copper rods in the ground and they think this is going to work. You know what? I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but I don't think UT has any research that says it's going to work. So we see a lot of this. Now, that photo of me is a real picture. Somebody took that of me. I didn't know they were doing it, but I've used it as a sticker and I think it's great. So that's my face. What about these homemade recipes that we can find online? I think a lot of this stuff is garbage. I don't think any of these people have ever been to Tennessee to deal with our humidity, our disease, and insect pressure in the summer. You go ahead and make your teaspoons full of this and that and the other, but I just don't know if it's going to work. There's a lot of websites out there, there's a lot of garbage out there that'll tell you to blend up an onion, put some cayenne pepper in it, do some dish soap. And the reality of it is these products are not well formulated. Using dish soap as a insecticidal soap is not going to work. Insecticidal soaps are different than just your conventional soap. So, what about these folks that like to plant marigolds next to their garden plants and they swear that no bugs attack their plants? Well, it could have just been pure coincidence. And I'm not hating on these folks by any means. And I love a marigold just as much as the next person. But statistically speaking, there's no research that says, hey, plant a marigold, you won't have any insect pressure in your garden. That's a bunch of hogwash. It just isn't true. But it's not going to stop me from planting marigolds in my garden, just so you know. So this is kind of the idealized vision. This is what we think of when we think of these, hippy dippy folks. They're out there. They're nuts. And I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you. I'm actually one of them. This is my back field. I hate spraying, and if I do have to spray, I try to use an organic option. I'm a beekeeper. I have vegetable gardens. I have native plants. So I am one of these hippy dippy people. So before you get too crazy, I'm the guy that takes pictures with my flowers and whatever. So not trying to offend anybody. That's just the reality. So let me give you some disclaimers. Will I cover every organic option available? No. There's too many of them. We only have an hour and you don't want to be here all night. Am I endorsing or recommending organic products over their synthetic alternatives? No, by any means. I'm going to give you information about what I think works and what doesn't. So, have I personally used all of these products? No, I haven't. I've used many of them, but not all of them. So, my intent is to provide you with alternatives, how they work, and under what conditions they should be considered. I'm not going to sit here and tell you if they work better or should be used at all. That's a decision you have to make. Okay. But I'm going to try to give you as much information as I possibly can so you can make an informed decision going forward. So you see these terrible things, caution, danger, pesticide, right? So I want you to remember a pesticide is any substance that is used to kill a pest. That is including insects, diseases, weeds, and even rodents, right? Organic pesticides, as the name would imply, they're still pesticides. Just because they're derived from natural sources over synthetic ones doesn't mean that they're still not pesticides. So even though they are organic, they are designed to kill or affect a living organism. So they can still affect non-target species. If you misuse organic sprays on a flowering plant and a honeybee was to be on that plant or hit those flowers, well, guess what? It's going to kill those honeybees just as much so as a synthetic product. So because of this, you should follow the same care and preventative measures. What's on the label, label is the law. So be careful using organics. Just because it's organic doesn't mean it can't be harmful. Okay. What are some myths and misconceptions? So organic means that it's completely safe and non-toxic. I think what I just said on the last slide disproves that. Organic pesticides are less effective than synthetic ones. In some ways, maybe they are, but not all. There are exceptions to every rule. Some organic pesticides are very much just as, if not better, than some synthetics. So if it's organic, you can use it anytime. Not true, and I'll talk about that. Timing is very crucial with organic. Organic pest control methods work instantly. I think people think that this is true for all pesticides. A lot of times that is definitely not the case. Myth, companion planting is a guaranteed pest deterrent. Again, I'm not hating on the marigold planters or the basil planters. I do it myself, but it's not going to work to minimize insect pressure in your garden. Organic pest control is always more expensive than synthetic. Now, on average, organic control options will run a little higher on average, but not all of them. There's still a lot of products out there that are economical and are just as, affordable as synthetic options. Myth, disease-resistant plant varieties don't need pest or disease control. This is a huge myth that I see. Just because a plant says that it has resistance does not mean that it is immune to a pest or disease. So we need to keep that in mind. So let's look at some of the pros and cons of organic pesticides. Obviously, they're environmentally safe for the most part. They're generally less toxic to non-target organisms. Again, they are derived from natural sources, so they will be a little bit less toxic to you or animals. They're sustainable. You're promoting biodiversity and reducing chemical accumulation in the soil and water, which is a huge issue that we see in conventional synthetic use products. We have the minimal resistance development. So, when we use pesticides over and over and over again, we have organisms that develop resistance. So, because a lot of organic pesticides are very target specific to a certain pest at a certain time, there's less likelihood of resistance that's going to develop in those target pests. And what about soil health? This gets overlooked so many times, but organic products are a lot less likely to disrupt or kill those microbes that are in the soil. And those microbes are everything. If you don't have healthy soil, you're not going to have healthy plants. I always tell my clients that healthy plants start with healthy soil. So we have to treat that soil like a living organism and be very, very careful what we're putting on it. So, what are some of the cons of organic pesticides? They do have limited efficacy, so they're not as fast acting or effective for certain pests or diseases, especially when that infestation of an insect or a disease is really, really severe. At that point, there's not a whole lot of organic products that are going to be as effective, right? They do require frequent reapplication. So a lot of these organic products have a very short shelf life once you use them on the plant, right? So they have very short residual activity and they will require you to spray them more often to have the same effectiveness. Cost. Now, I will show you prices on some of these things. They can get outrageous. I hope that you make good judgment and common sense decisions when you go out to buy things, but you can get a huge bill real quick if you're not careful. So they do have a little bit of a limited range. Again, they're very target and pest specific, so they're not going to be as broad spectrum as some of the synthetic options. They are a little bit more complex in the application, so they do require very, very specific timing and conditions for them to work properly. And it does make their use a little bit more complicated than just, say, going out there and dousing your plant with 7 Dust. It's not that simple when we're talking about organic products. And again, there's always, I want to reiterate this fact, there is still the harm to beneficial insects. And I'll talk more about that as well. So let's just do a little overview of synthetic options. Again, they offer broad spectrum control. And by that, I mean that they're fast, they're effective, and they control a wide range of pests and diseases. So one product you may have one product for all insects that you're trying to treat versus an organic product is very insect specific. Same with diseases. They are more long lasting on average, so they will have a longer residual activity. They don't break down as quickly because they are synthetic, and that will require fewer reapplications over time. They can be more cost effective. One of the reasons being is that you're not having to apply them so often and that they're mass produced and they're easier to come by, right? They're consistent and they're predictable, so they tend to deliver very predictable results and consistent results when applied properly. If you go out there and spray malathion on a plant with an aphid infestation, you can guarantee those aphids are toast, right? There's no questions about it. So they're very consistent, very predictable. On average, they're going to work faster. So these products are really beefy. They are designed to kill, and they do it well. So they can handle a severe infestation and completely wipe out a population of insects and even some disease pests. And they're very targeted, so they're specifically engineered to target pests, and hopefully they'll provide less off-target issues. So how do we know if something is organic? When you go out there looking at products, there's so many things out there. I mean, you can find hundreds, if not thousands, of products for any given pest. So how do you know if it's organic? Well, there's this certification called OMRI. This is an organization that is non-governmental, that's a private institute, Organic Materials Review Institute. So OMRI basically reviews products, and they get the certification to say that these are officially listed as an organic product. So if it's OMRI listed, that's kind of the governing body for all organic products. You can go to their website, omri.org, and you can know that that product has been approved. So it doesn't have the OMRI seal on there. If it lacks it, you may see verbiage like organic or approved for organic production. So if you are looking at getting USDA certified, you definitely want to make sure you're using OMRI products because there's a lot of misleading verbiage that are put on labels that those products may not indeed be actively actually approved for organic production. So again, check those active ingredients. You want to make sure that there's no synthetic chemicals, harsh additives, or GMO related things. So these are 3 products here, and each one of them are OMRI approved. So you can see those OMRI labels are right there front and center. Makes it real easy for you to see. Now, sometimes that OMRI listing is not on the front of the label, which I don't understand why any company wouldn't put it on there front and center. Sometimes, like that evergreen one in the middle, they have a multi-page little booklet there. Sometimes it's somewhere in between there. But make sure that you're checking that out. So if you do want to find out if before you buy a product, if it's OMRI listed, so we'll use Trilogy as an example. It's a fungicide, miticide, and insecticide. So I typed in Trilogy and it pulled right up. And this is the certifying document that says it's approved. And then as of November 29th, 2012, it was listed. Now it did expire on December 1st, but I'm sure that they reapplied. This presentation that I originally put that screenshot is a couple years old. So another one, spinosad. Let's say you just want to type in spinosad. That's a very broad classification of an organic pesticide. It's going to then list every product that OMRI has certified that contains that active ingredient spinosad. So it's very, very handy, very useful. And you can click that individual product and it'll give you very specific information related to that product. So again, make sure that you're going to OMRI site, look for that label, be very careful for anything that says organic or approved as organic. If it doesn't have that OMRI label, you're really playing with fire there. So you can see here there are a lot of very conventional pesticides out there and look at some of these alternatives. So pretty much anything that you can find as a synthetic product. So carbaryl, for example, is the active ingredient in the tried and true 7, right? Well, there's always going to be an organic alternative. So neem oil would be one of them. Insecticidal soaps. Malthion's been around for years. Spinosad, BT is good alternatives. What about permethrin or pyrethroids? So we're looking at pyrethrins, which is the naturally derived one. Diatomaceous earth. Now, imidacloprid is a synthetic insecticide that is systemic. That means it gets sucked up by the plant and distributed in all the growing parts. There's no real equivalent to that in organics, but neem oil does have systemic type properties and it can help with that. So, anyways, this list is pretty exhaustive there. Same thing is true for our fungicides, right? So, chlorothalonil, which is the active ingredient in Daconil, you can use copper as an alternative. Mancozeb, you can use sulfur. Myclobutanil, you can use certain bacillus type, organisms to help there. So, again, and I've given Cody a copy of this presentation as a PDF. So if I'm flying through a lot of these charts and you're not getting a chance to take a shot or make notes, fear not. I'm sure he'll share that with you. And I believe this is being recorded too. So if I'm going fast, it's just because we have a lot of ground to cover. But fear not, you'll get a copy of this so you'll have it for your references. So like this fat guy right here, let's do a deep dive. Now I'm going to get a little technical on this, but I want to because I want you to understand how these products work. And I want you to really, the message I want you to understand is organic still aims to kill. So I'm going to talk specifically about how these products work, how they function to actually work as the pesticide. We'll start right off with pyrethrin. So pyrethrin is a very, very common broad spectrum pesticide that is an organic product. It is derived from those flowers right there. And I'm sure a lot of you probably buy them every late summer, early fall. Those are chrysanthemums, garden mums. So there is a compound in there called pyrethrin that how people figure this stuff out, I have no idea. People way smarter than me. But there's this compound called pyrethrin, which disrupts the nervous system of a very broad range of insects. Okay, so now I want you to note that there is a synthesized version of pyrethrin. It is called pyrethroid. So if you're looking at products like permethrin, cypermethrin, deltamethrin, you have to understand those are very different than pyrethrin or pyrethroids. So pyrethrin is organic, pyrethroids are synthetic. So again, synthetic means it's chemically engineered. It is not naturally derived. So basically, they've taken what is a natural compound and they've synthesized it in a lab somewhere, but it will be slightly different. So how does it work exactly? So it works to overstimulate an insect's nervous system, causing it to lose control and die. Basically, it causes all of their internal functions to go haywire. So it affects their nervous system. It affects how their nerves send signals in their body. Okay, and as a result, this causes the insect to basically lose control. Those neurons start firing uncontrollably, and then it causes issues with their body movement, feeding, and all of the things that they're doing in a day-to-day existence, right? So it leads to paralysis and death. So the insect basically can't feed, can't move, and it dies. So pyrethrins act fast. They often kill insects within minutes after contact. So it is one of the fastest working organic pesticides that are out there. And again, it's going to be way more harmful to insects than people. I don't know if pyrethrin has ever been known to kill a single person. Let's knock on some wood there. You may have to drink gallons of it. And I'm sure it's not going to be pleasant for you, but again, not going to be as toxic as, let's say, chugging down on some malathion. So let's look at some application and limitations. So application tips, you need to treat a plant and make contact with the pest. That is the key here. So this isn't like, oh, spray it and hope for the best. No, you have to identify the insect pest, you have to see it, and you have to actually make contact. So that product, whether it be a powder or a liquid flowable, you have to make contact with the pest. And this is going to be one that goes for most of these. You want to apply them early in the morning or in the evening. This is when pollinators are less active. Also, it makes sure that you're not going to burn the plants up, right? So spraying early in the day and it's not overly hot is going to help those plants not have a condition where they just basically get stressed out. Make sure to cover every part of that plant. You need to get the top side of the leaf, the underside of the leaf. It's easier said than done, right? It takes a little extra effort. And use when the pests are actively present. Again, this is not a preventative. You can't spray a pyrethrin hoping that bugs won't come on it, right? It has to hit the contact with those pests, and that's the way it works. So it may need reapplications due to a sort residual. Let's say you spray it in the morning and it rains in the afternoon. Well, guess what? You're gonna have to spray it again tomorrow because it's washed off the leaf. So again, it is short lasting. It photo degrades very quickly, so it breaks down in sunlight. This is going to be true of a lot of these products, so I won't repeat that every time. It has no residual control, which means that once that plant gets rained on, gets watered on, or just a few days go by, there's no other that pyrethrin then is useless basically. So it can absolutely harm beneficial insects if you spray it on a plant where, let's say, you got ladybugs that are feeding on aphids, you'll kill those ladybugs just the same as you will the aphids. So it's less effective on hidden pests, especially on things that are underside of leaves or in the soil, etc. And it works best on small, soft-bodied insects. And I'll give you examples of those here in just a second. So it's less effective on larger, hard-bodied pests, let's say something like a Japanese beetle. It's going to be a little bit more hard to control that just because it's got a thick shell, basically. So pyrethrins, simple takeaway, they work fast for a quick knockdown, but you have to hit the pest, and they have no residual activity. So see, these are a few of the pests that they treat for. Again, aphids, they'll toast an aphid. Now, flea beetles are tinier than most beetles. A huge pest of eggplant. If you've ever grown an eggplant, I guarantee you've had flea beetles. They like to chew little holes in the leaves. They're tiny little guys. They're about the size of a sesame seed or smaller, and they're called flea beetles because you see them and then they spring away and they're gone. Cucumber beetles, even though they have a hard shell, they're not as hard as some of the pests. So there's striped and spotted cucumber beetles. They're a huge pest of cucurbits. So that's cucumbers, zucchini, melon, squash, pumpkins, you name it. Thrips, this is a huge pest that most people are not even aware of. You can see that leaf there in the lower left, that little stippling damage. We call that little spotted damage, that's stippling feeding damage from thrips. And then something like cabbage worms, which if you're growing cabbage right now, I guarantee you're seeing cabbage worms as well. Pyrethrin will toast them. Okay. So there are many, many, many different versions of these products out there. So you can see here, this is an exhaustive list. Again, it's one of the most commonly used organic pesticides. There's a ton of them out there. Okay. These are some of the commercial grade products. I want you to look at some of these prices here. So that evergreen product is $59 for a 16 ounce. This MGK Azera, that is $477 for a gallon. Now, I'm sure that goes a very long way. It probably is highly concentrated, but again, it gets costly. And then this one here, Pyganic, that's going to run you $175 a quart. Now, note these prices are a little out of date. This is probably from early 2025. So this stuff can get costly. But basically, every single one of these pyrethrin-based products would have a synthetic alternative as well. So these charts will be available to you, so I don't have to go through them piece by piece. Moving on to neem oil. So neem oil is a natural pesticide that's derived from that tree right there in the picture, and that is Azadirachta indica. That is the tree. So what you get out of that is azadirachtin. It controls a pretty broad range of pests, and it also has some antifungal properties as well, and it has been known to control nematodes, which exist in the soil. Okay. So again, these are just a few of the pests that they work on. Again, aphids, very, very common garden pests. Talked about cabbage worms, flea beetles, but is also very effective against powdery mildew. This is a pest that we see as a disease in cucurbits. If you've ever grown squash, zucchini, anything that is a melon or cucurbit related plant, you're going to have powdery mildew sooner or later. Certain rust diseases, what you're seeing there is cedar apple rust. I'm sure if you grow fruit trees and apples or pears, you've seen that. And then that is black spot on a strawberry. So again, it has some antifungal properties as well. So how does it work? It basically stops insects from feeding and growing. So it is most effective when these insects are young, and it's used early and consistently. So basically, once they are exposed to neem oil, it causes them to stop feeding. Okay. And it also acts as a growth regulator. So any of the immature stages of an insect, whether it be a nymph or a caterpillar, it basically it regulates them to not mature into adults, basically. So it also interferes with production of egg laying. So once an adult insect make contact with it, um, those adults that are egg laying will not be able to do so. Okay. And it can smother soft-bodied insects. So something like an aphid, you coat that thing with neem oil, it is going to basically clog up all their breathing sporacles and they're not going to be able to survive that. Okay. So let's look at some application tips. Again, you have to spray this directly on the pest and plant surfaces. Good coverage is key. Again, that's going to be a common theme. Apply to tops and underside of the leaf. Obviously, you want to hit the insects where they're feeding. It's best when used early before any infestation gets heavy. So the younger the insect, the better. You want to apply it in the evening or early morning. Again, this is an oil-based product. So what happens when you spray neem oil on a plant in July in Tennessee at about noon? You are going to sizzle that plant. So be very mindful that these products can burn plants up very easily. So I typically would never use a product like this over 80 degrees. So I'm either going to try to do it in the evening or very early in the morning. And I'm going to kind of look at the forecast to make sure that it's just not going to be a scorching day. Maybe pick a nice overcast day will be nice. This would need to be reapplied every 7 to 10 days, right? So you don't want to do it every single day because it is oil. It doesn't break down quite as quickly, but you do need to reapply it. Okay. So it is a little bit slower acting because it's causing those insects to stop feeding. That doesn't mean they're going to die immediately, and they can still cause some damage to the plant. Again, it's going to require some repeat applications for 100% efficacy. Talked about it. It's going to be an issue if you're applying in hot sun or hot temperatures, and it's not as effective on large mature insects that are have a shell or a heavy coating on it. And again, you have to coat that insect or it has to be ingested, and it will not control hidden pests very well. So simple takeaway, neem oil works by stopping them from feeding and growing. So again, apply it early and consistently. Okay. So again, here's a list. Very, very common insecticide. There's a lot of them out there. You can buy anything that's in a spray bottle like this means it's ready to use. And that's what that RTU means. So if you see RTU listed there on some of these product types, that means it's in a ready to use format. You don't have to dilute it with water. All you gotta do is buy the little jug and you spray it onto the plant. It doesn't go very far, but again, you're not having to mix it into a pump sprayer. So it's very convenient if you're just using it in a small scale. Here are some uh, commercial grade versions of this. So you can see here MGK Trilogy, that's 170 bucks. Dynagrow, that'll run you 189 a gallon, $62 a quart. And then this one, Nemex, that's $270 for a quart. Now again, these products are going to be very highly concentrated. They're going to go a very long way, but again, the cost can be quite expensive versus let's say you buy a gallon of malathion. It's going to pale in comparison to a gallon of neem oil. So again, these are very, very expensive on the commercial scale. There's a lot of other oils out there, and most of them will have some effect. Again, it's an oil. It's going to clog up their breathing pores. It's going to cause some type of ill effect. I wouldn't want to be coated in oil. You douse me with olive oil, I'm going to be pissed off and unpleasant too. So just remember, there are a lot of oils out there. Some of them you'll see peppermint oil, citronella. Now, citronella oil, mosquitoes don't like it, but I have never known it to be 100% effective. I have citronella candles, I have citronella incense, I have citronella plants, and I'm still getting eat up with mosquitoes. But if you mix it in with some other oil products, it can be effective. Tea tree oil, eucalyptus, lemongrass oil, lavender, and thyme. Again, they all have some anti-insecticidal properties, but none of them are going to be 100% effective. So moving on, we're going to look at spinosad, kind of an odd word. So this is a naturally derived insecticide that is from soil fermentation of the bacterium, and I'm not going to pronounce that publicly, but you can sound it out at a later time. Not even going to try it, but that's the bacterium. So this is the fermentation from that bacteria causes spinosad to be produced. Pretty wide spectrum in its control. So again, aphids, cabbage worms, flea beetles. Now fruit flies. If you're growing fruit crops, there's an insect out there called spotted wing Drosophila. SWD is how you'll see it listed. That's in the bottom left corner. It's a tiny little fruit fly. They will feed and lay eggs in fruit crops. They like soft fruits like brambles, so berries, raspberries, blackberries, and also blueberries. And they are a huge pest. They're kind of a newer invasive pest the last 10 or 15 years, but you certainly want to be mindful that these things are out there. because they will lay eggs in fruit. And then when you sell a product to a client, it could be days later, those eggs are hatching out and the clients are not going to be very happy about it. So, spinosad is a great control for that. Leaf mining insects there. It looks like a kale leaf or some type of a leafy green there. You can see those leaf miners do exactly what the name implies. They burrow inside that leaf and feed on that chlorophyll tissue. And then white flies are a very big pest in greenhouse settings. So if you're using high tunnels for production, white flies, you're going to get them sooner or later. So be mindful of those. They usually will, not usually, almost always will be on the underside of the leaf. They are tiny, tiny, tiny little guys. Uh, grain of sand, itty bitty little things. You'll see them in the greenhouse fluttering about, but they are tiny. So how does it work? Basically, it disrupts an insect's nervous system, causing it to stop feeding, and eventually, obviously, if they're not eating, they're going to die. So again, it's disrupting those nerve signals so the insect can't function normally, and it leads to paralysis and death. So very, very similar to some of the other products we've talked about. Again, it's most effective when the insect actually eats the treated plant material. So if it is a leaf-feeding insect, let's say like that leaf miner, and that material has been treated with spinosad, it has to ingest that material. It's going to be very, very effective. And again, it's a naturally occurring microorganism. Okay, so let's look at application. You want to apply this when pests are actively feeding. So that's when those pests are actively going to ingest that product. You want to spray to cover all the plant surfaces. Again, this is a common theme. Works very well on caterpillars, thrips, and leaf miners. Again, caterpillars are going to be devouring foliage. If you spray, let's say, a cabbage plant, or you have some other tomatoes, let's say you have tobacco hornworm, and you spray it with spinosad and they eat that leaf, it's gonna kill them pretty quickly. Again, apply late in the evening or early in the day to protect our pollinators. And again, you want to reapply this every 5 to 7 days. Read the label though. There still is a threshold. You don't want to overuse these products even though they're organic. Over a certain time, you could develop phytotoxicity. You can also cause some issues with the quality of the fruit and the actual growth of that plant. So again, always follow the label. Don't just say, I'm going to spray this every 7 days. Make sure you're not spraying over the recommended dosage per gardening season. So follow that label very carefully. So again, this isn't going to be an immediate knockdown. It's not like putting seven on your plants. You're going to have to rely on that insect to be eating the treated foliage, and then all of that nervous system disruption will take place and they'll die. Again, this will 100% harm beneficial insects. If you're spraying onto a plant, and you're coating those insects, it's going to kill them. So be very careful. Again, less effective on large, mature insects, very common theme with a lot of these products. So again, it's going to require ingestion or very direct contact. And again, if a pest is hidden and you're not coating that plant from top to bottom, it is not going to work well. This is one of the few products where overuse can lead to resistance. So it's always good to rotate your products. So I wouldn't just use spinosad. If I'm using an insecticide that's organic, I would mix that in with, let's say, neem oil or as a diractant, something like that. So make sure you're using more than one. So again, takeaways, spinosad works a little slower, but it's very effective. One is that once that insect stops feeding and once it gets exposed, it's going to die. So again, here are some common products that you're going to see on the market. Tons of them. Again, this is a very commonly used insecticide. Lots of stuff available. There's ready to use products, and anything that's in the jug is concentrated. So just follow those labels. Here are some commercial grade. Now look at this one, Entrust SC. That is $635 a quart. And again, that price is out of date. I bet it's in the 700s now. I don't know how far it goes, but man, is it expensive. You better make sure you're growing a crop that's worth it. Because I'm not spending 635 bucks on one quart of Entrust. Not doing it. This one's called Sultan, much more affordable, $53 for a quart. And then this one's Conserve Naturalite, made by Southern Ag, and that is $29.95 on Amazon. Jeff Bezos will have it at your door by 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Gotta love Amazon. All right, insecticidal soaps. This is something that I use regularly. I'm a huge fan of insecticidal soaps. Big, big fan of that. If you have house plants and you've ever had fungus gnats, you've probably used it, but it treats a very wide range of pests. So it's very plant safe. Again, this is not the same as, let's say, Dawn dish soap. These are two very different products. All right, so I want you to bear in mind a lot of these homemade remedies, all this stuff you find online says put a little Palmolive, put a little Dawn. It's not the same. All right, I'm here to tell you it's not the same. These are differently derived soapy fatty acids, basically. So very, very different in the way that they are composed. Okay. Very, very good for houseplants, but they treat a very wide range of pests. So again, aphids, mealybugs, look at that. That's an odd pest there. They will get on pretty much any vegetable plant, house plants, ornamentals. If you're doing cut flowers, you might see mealybugs. and they just look like cottony. They almost look like the hackberry woolly aphid that we deal with every late summer. Leaf hoppers, many different types of leaf hoppers. They're green, red, yellow, orange, you name it. Those are a pest that defoliate. So you can see that one has chewed a hole in that leaf. Spider mites, huge problem in a lot of plants, more so on the ornamental side, but we can certainly see them in garden plants as well. Sawfly. Sawfly is an issue for a lot of different plants. Sawfly is the immature stage of a fly, and they actually have a caterpillar type larvae. And then scale insects. So insecticidal soaps really work well for scale. Again, scale are not something that you're going to see a whole lot of on garden plants, but you could see them on woody ornamentals such as fruit trees and woody plants like that. So how does it work? Basically, it works to break down the insect's outer layer, causing it to dry out more or less. So it's basically disrupting that protective layer on soft-bodied insects. It causes it to lose moisture and dry out. So again, it's disrupting and damaging those cell membranes that basically breaks away their outer coating. You have to make contact with the insect to make it work. That's the only drawback. So again, this is a top to bottom coating of the plant, upside of the leaf, bottom side of the leaf. You got to coat those pests for it to work, right? And it's very effective on soft-bodied pests. So aphids, mites, whiteflies, fungus gnats, stuff like that. Don't try using this on Japanese beetles. They'll laugh at you. It's not going to work. All right, so let's look at the application. Again, you have to make contact with that insect. You got to cover the plant thoroughly. Again, apply early in the morning to reduce plant stress. This works best on small, soft-bodied insects. And again, if this is something, if you've got a severe infestation of a given pest and you're noticing you sprayed it, let's say you spray on Monday and then a week later you're still seeing that pest, well, guess what? Spray again, but follow the label carefully, obviously. Again, it has no residual control. It's a contact insecticide only. Has to make contact. It really only works well on soft-bodied insects and certain scale. It can break that cuticle down. Um, very ineffective on hard-bodied insects. Can cause leaf burn on sensitive plants if over-applied. So again, follow that label. Make sure you're not spraying on hot weather or very hot days with full sun. And again, it's not going to be effective on hidden pests that are hiding either inside the foliage, like a leaf miner, or let's say something like a boring insect that gets in the stem of a plant. It's not gonna work. Okay. So again, it's a very safe and effective option, very affordable, but you have to hit the pest directly and you have to be very consistent with the application. Tons of them out there. There's ready to use products. There's concentrated products, lots and lots and lots of them. This is probably the most popular organic insecticide out there, in my opinion, is insecticidal soap. Again, here are some commercial grade products. So Impede is one. It's going to run you 153 bucks a for 2.5 gallons. Not the most expensive one we've seen, but still expensive. Copa, 158 bucks for 2.5 gallons, and Desex, 120 bucks for a gallon. So very expensive stuff. But again, it's going to go a long way. Okay. So let's talk about this weird word, Bacillus thuringiensis, also referred to as BT, and that's how I will refer to it for the remainder of this little section. I'm not going to pronounce that word every time. So BT, what is it? It's a bacterium that produces proteins that are toxic to certain insects, very specific insects. And it's a great biological insecticide used to control those pests. It can also promote soil health and plant growth because it is a microbial based organism. It does help improve your soil microbe populations. These are going to control, BT will only work against larval stages of all of these insects. Now, once these insects mature, it has no effect on them whatsoever. So you have to hit them in their larval stage. So caterpillars is its primary uh, target, basically. So that big ugly guy on the left, tobacco hornworm or tomato hornworm, if you've ever seen one, you won't forget it. They can devour a plant very short amount of time. They eat the leaves, the fruit, mostly a pest on tomatoes in a garden. We got webworms there in the top right. We have corn earworm, and then we have, I'm not exactly sure what that, maybe some type of sawfly larvae there in the bottom right. Again, we have to hit it at this stage. Once they turn into adult, it's not going to work at all. So how does it work? It relies on the insect eating it, basically. So if you treat a plant with BT, that insect then feeds on the foliage. It's going to disrupt their digestive system. So basically, it's going to cause some serious stomach aches in any insect that eats it. So they have to eat it, obviously, and then it releases a toxin in the gut of these plants. So BT produces a protein that disrupts their digestive system. And the result is it causes that insect to stop eating. Basically, its digestive system just stops functioning. And if it stops eating, it's going to die in a few days. Not immediate though, but it's going to be effective if it eats it in a couple of days. So again, it's very target specific. Caterpillars. That's the take home here. BT will kill caterpillars. Application tips, again, you want to apply when these pests are small, so catch them early. You want to make sure that it's being eaten for it to work. So spray, good coverage. You want to get the entire leaf surface where these caterpillars are feeding to make sure that they're actually going to ingest that foliage that's been treated. It's really effective on young larval stages, but it'll work on any caterpillar. But obviously, the younger you can catch it, the better. Apply it in the evening. It's very, very photo degradable, so it's going to break down in sunlight very, very quickly. So try to apply in the evening, and that'll help reduce the breakdown. And again, you want to apply it every 5 to 7 days, or if it rains at lunchtime that you sprayed that morning, well, guess what? Go ahead and spray the next day because it's going to wash it right off. All right. So again, it's very, very specific to certain pests, caterpillars. Again, that's the one thing I want you to remember. It must be ingested to work. It doesn't work just because you spray BT on a plant that has a bug on it. Just because you coat that tomato hornworm does not mean it's going to kill it. It has to eat the leaf that's been treated to ingest that BT to cause it to die. So it is a little slower acting. Again, those insects have to eat it, and then it causes that digestive issue to them. And again, it's going to be very photodegradable, breaks down in sunlight, it's easily washed off in rain, and it's not effective on any pest outside of a caterpillar. So again, very, very specific, but it's very, very effective. Excellent, excellent product. Now you'll see BT sometimes as a dunk used for mosquitoes. They sell those little rings. Again, they're controlling the larval stage of that mosquito when they're in water. I have a koi pond out back, and I have some ponds here on my property. And gosh, in the summertime, it is just a mosquito magnet. So I'll use some BT little rings in there, and it will kill out the larval stage of a mosquito as well. So again, tons of versions of this that are out there. Very, very common product that you'll see used as a concentrate or as a ready-to-use spray. One of the most common ones that have been used or in the commercial trade is Dipel. This one's been out on the market for years. This is one here that's 79 bucks. Thuricide is one made by Southern Ag. You can get it on Amazon, pretty affordable, 17.41 an ounce. And then there are powdered versions of Dipel, which is what that DF is, and then there's emulsifiable solids, so there's liquid concentrations as well. Okay, so let's talk about this one, kaolin clay. What in the world is that? So kaolin clay is exactly what it says. It's clay. It's a naturally derived mineral, and it's used to control plants by providing them with a protective film. So it doesn't necessarily, it does no killing on contact, but it does confuse plants or confuse insects because it's got this protective coating of clay. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to eat anything that is coated with kaolin clay. I'm sure it tastes absolutely abysmal. So it's not a very broad spectrum thing. I put this in there because if you look up any organic pest control, you'll probably come across this. Um, it's out there. I just want you to be aware of it, but I'm just going to go ahead and tell you it's probably not worth the money. I'll say all that to say that, okay? It is somewhat effective on controlling certain pests. So some of them are leafhoppers, flea beetles, cucumber beetles, thrips, and stink bugs. Stink bugs are a huge problem in gardens. They like to feed on the fruit. They use their proboscis, which is a piercing, sucking mouth part. If you've ever watched a stink bug on, let's say, a tomato, they put their beak-like mouth part into the plant, and it actually releases enzymes that break down the cell walls in the fruit, and then it causes them to become liquefied, and then they suck up the slurry as a result. So you'll see these yellow lesions on the fruit, especially of tomatoes, very sensitive. So it confuses the hell out of those insects. So this is what it looks like when it's treated. You see this a lot of use in USDA certified organic orchards. A lot of folks will use this, but again, it's on a large scale. It is very, very expensive, very, very cost prohibitive. So how does it work? Again, it's coating that plant with a protective film, so it repels and confuses, or so they claim, right? So it's just creating a physical barrier, basically. It makes plants very unattractive for feeding and egg laying. It causes pests to be confused. They don't recognize the plant as a host. Maybe it smells different, looks different, and they're like, "What the hell's going on here? We don't know what's going on." So it confuses them. And again, it reflects sunlight and reduces plant stress. So sometimes these are used simply for the point of providing a reflective coating on plants that are in a very hot, dry environment. Okay. So application, again, you have to coat the entire plant. That's the only way this is going to work. You got to get on the leaves, the stems, the fruit. Easier said than done. Coverage is crucial, right? So the plant should literally look like it's had a perfectly well coated like powdered sugar all over it, basically, except it does not taste like powdered sugar, unfortunately. You want to apply before the pest pressure begins, right? So if you've already got pests on there, don't use kale and clay. You want to use it as a preventative, not a reactive type measure. You're going to have to apply it pretty much every 7 to 10 days or after a rain event. So this stuff's super expensive. Let's say you treat all your plants with it, and then an hour later it rains. Well, guess what? You're going to be treating it again. So it's kind of a difficult product to use. So it's not poison. It doesn't kill any insects outright. It just is going to make it very unattractive for them to feed. You have to have excellent coverage. It's pretty messy. It's going to leave a very, you saw those plants. It's just going to be just white and messy. And clay gets sticky when it gets rained on, so it's going to require some cleaning of the fruit after you apply it. Again, it's going to require very frequent reapplication. And once a pest is heavily established in a plant population, it will not work. So again, it protects the plants with creating a barrier, but coverage and consistency is everything. So there are a few products out there. Again, I didn't list prices on here because there's so few of them on the market. Surround wettable powder is one of them, very, very expensive. This one is called Team Grow Armor. It's another one. It's out there, but again, just be careful. It's very, very difficult to use. So let's talk about fungicides here in our remaining minutes. Copper-based fungicides have been around for years. They are highly effective. They work excellent. Excellent fungicide. And basically, it's derived from copper. So they utilize copper ions to inhibit the growth of harmful pathogens in a broad range. It could be vegetables, it could be fruit trees, it could be ornamental plants. Copper is very, very effective. The most common base copper fungicides will include sometimes a mixture. So copper sulfate, also known as the Bordeaux mixture. There was a vintner somewhere in France, I can't remember when, maybe late 1800s. He realized he was spraying copper, and then he was also using sulfur. And he realized that copper and sulfur, or copper sulfate, is incredibly effective as a fungicide on grapes, but it works for most plants as well. So you may see Bordeaux mixture referenced when you're doing some research. Copper oxychloride, copper hydroxide, and copper ammonium complexes. Not important to remember, but those are some of them out there. So it does have some fungal, antifungal properties and also some antibacterial properties as well. So it's a very, very broad spectrum product. If you grow fruit trees, specifically apples or pears, fire blight is a perennial problem. It causes those little candy canes of death, as I like to call it. So it'll cause a crooking on those terminal limbs, and they die back, and it can cause some severe problems. So there are very few products out there that are even marginally effective at treating fire blight. Copper's one of them. Streptomycin is the synthetic product that we use, but copper is another one that you can mix in. Bacterial leaf spot, huge issue in tomatoes, as you can see there by that photo. A downy mildew is slightly different than powdery mildew. You can see it causes those prismatic lesions, causes a lot of chlorosis and eventually necrosis on that leaf. And then early blight. I think if you've ever grown tomatoes, you've probably had early blight. Causes those large, starts out as a yellow lesion and then it turns necrotic and it sometimes looks like a target. Starts at the bottom of the plant and works its way up. So copper is very, very effective as a garden pesticide on just about every vegetable crop that we grow in Tennessee. So how do they work? They are protecting the plant surface and stopping diseases before they even get started. So it's providing this protective barrier on the plant, sits on the surface, and when those pathogens go to take root on that plant, it disrupts them from being able to take root, basically. So remember, disease spores are in the air. You breathe them in every second of every day, whether it be powdery mildew, sooty mold, fusarium, you name it, they're in the air. So when those pathogens produce spores and those spores land on a leaf, if it's treated with copper, it has a very, very high level of resistance. So it's disrupting the enzymes and proteins that those fungal and bacterial cells need for survival. And it stops the spores from growing. So it literally prevents those fungal spores from germinating and infecting the plant. But again, this is a contact product. It only works on pathogens that it touches, and it does not move systemically within the plant. Okay? So applications and limitations. Now let me say this as well. Let me go back a couple pictures. So if you have an existing infection, let's say that downy mildew there or that early blight, you can spray copper till the cows come home. It is not going to make that infected leaf turn green again. Okay? What you would want to do as a preventative, you want to get out all of the diseased tissue, and when you spray copper, any fungicide is preventative, not reactive. So you are protecting healthy tissue from becoming infected, but it is never going to heal a leaf that's already infected. So again, cultural practices are key. Get in there, clean up those plants. You don't want to cut a limb off with early blight and leave it laying in the garden because guess what? It's still producing spores. You want to no, don't compost it, sorry. You want to burn it or send it to the landfill. You could try to compost it, but if your compost pile isn't getting up to the recommended temperature to sterilize it, which most people do never get it too hot for that to happen, I recommend just burning it or sending it to the landfill. So again, just remember, fungicides are proactive, not reactive. So you're helping healthy tissue become basically protected from fungal spores or bacterium from spreading. Okay? So again, application tips, you want to apply it preventatively. You want to cover that plant very thoroughly. Again, you're going to require reapplication every 7 to 10 days, or if it rains. Um, you want to use during periods of high humidity. That's when disease pressure is at its highest. So if we have a stretch of weather where it's hot, humid, which basically is the entire summer of Tennessee, you want to make sure you've got that copper fungicide ready to go. But again, make sure you're rotating it. Some of the other fungicides that I'll talk about here in the next slide, you want to rotate. So one spray could be copper, the next one may be something like sulfur. So rotate your products, okay? So again, it's preventative. It won't fix any infected tissues. It can cause phytotoxicity or leaf burn, especially in hot weather. So be careful when you spray it early in the morning, late in the evening. It will leave a residue on plants, but it's nothing that a little bit of water won't take off. Overuse can lead to a copper buildup in the soil, which is not necessarily ideal. So be careful when you use these products. And again, it's very broad spectrum and it can certainly affect some of those soil microbes. Just because it's a soil microbe, copper does not know the difference between that and an early blight spore. So be careful about that. That is not supposed to say insecticidal soap there. That was copy and paste error. The takeaway is it works really well. Sorry about that, but copper fungicide works really well. It's one of the most effective fungicides that we have available, and it's organic, which is wonderful. Tons of different versions out there. You can buy ready-to-use products. You can buy liquid concentrates. There's a lot of them out there. Here's some commercial-grade versions of those products. Again, they're not going to be as expensive simply because they're very readily available. Okay? And what about this one? Trichoderma, SPP. Well, SPP basically means species. So Trichoderma is a general classification of beneficial fungi. And these fungi are found naturally in soil and around plant ecosystems. And they're widely recognized for their biocontrol properties. So they can help soil and they can also help plants be a little bit more resistant to certain diseases. So you're improving the plant health by promoting a healthy microbiome in the soil, which results in a plant that has a better immune system. Okay. So it doesn't necessarily make these plants immune to these diseases, but it can certainly make them a little less susceptible. So one very common thing we see in the summer here is sclerotinia blight. Fusarium wilt is a huge problem in many vegetable crops, especially if you're growing in areas with poor drainage. Basically causes root dieback, streaking in the vascular tissue, and basically causes those plants to wilt and die. If you've ever grown transplants before, which a lot of us probably have, you've seen this damping off right at the soil line where that transplant stem meets the soil. It'll just shrivel up and it causes that whole plant to die. So using trichoderma maybe mixed in with your soil media at the onset of seed starting will be helpful. Another wilt disease, verticillium wilt, again, very common, very destructive if you have it. So how does it work? It protects plants by living in the soil, and it also helps outcompete these fungi that are harmful as well. So it colonizes in the roots and soil, and it takes up resources and space where pathogens would otherwise be living, right? It can attack and break down pathogens. So some species directly work as a parasite. So they parasitize certain harmful pathogens and they can actually destroy them. It does produce natural antifungal compounds. So it suppresses disease in that root zone by releasing those compounds. And again, I think the big benefit here is it's boosting the plant's defenses, basically. So you're giving that plant every opportunity as possible to be as healthy as it can. So it's not a question of if a disease is going to be present, it's when. So you want to give that plant every chance it can have. So it's in increasing root growth and overall plant vigor. Um, Again, you want to apply this to the root zone or soil. It is most effective below ground. You can use at planting or transplanting. So it can be mixed in as you're planting your plants. Can be applied as a drench type product, a seed treatment, or mixed into your potting media, like we talked about with growing transplants. You can reapply it periodically, so it can be applied more than once during any growing season or within multiple seasons. And it really works best in really well managed soil. So if you have heavy, hard, compacted clay, don't waste your money on trichoderma. But if you're using, let's say, raised beds or you have a lot of organic matter incorporated into your soil structure, it's going to work just fine. Okay. So what are some of the limitations? Again, with all of the fungicides or anything that has antifungal or bacterial properties, it's preventative. It is not something that you can use reactively, right? So it's not going to fix a severe problem or establish root diseases, right? It's going to take time to establish. You're relying on that enzymatic and microbial action in the soil. It's not a let's put trichoderma down and then we're going to have a healthy plant tomorrow. It's going to take time, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes even years to build a healthy soil root microbiome. So again, soil moisture, soil conditions, temperature, the amount of organic matter are all going to depend on all of those play a role in how effective trichoderma is. So works best in that rich organically comprised soils. Maybe less effective on poor soils that are uh, just a lot of clay soils here in Middle Tennessee and in the Cumberland Plateau and the Central Basin here. So it's not a quick product, but it does work over time. Okay, so it'll help protect those roots. It outcompetes diseases and it gives that plant a little bit of a boost. Okay, these products are very expensive. This one here, now these are some of the homeowner version ones, but none of them are cheap. Let's look at this root shield here. So for a pound, it's 120 bucks. 3 pounds is $248. And if you really want 30 pounds of it, you're going to pay for it, $2,500. I just don't have that kind of money laying around. I'm not doing it. This is one that's very, very cost effective. You can get 1 pound from Amazon, Myco Apply, and it's 46 bucks. So it's out there. Let's talk about elemental sulfur. I think most people are familiar with sulfur as an acidifier. If you're growing blueberries, or if you're growing azaleas, rhododendrons, elemental sulfur is the product that you use to lower soil pH, but it also works as an antifungal property as well. So it can control certain diseases that you see listed there. So it works really great against botrytis. It's excellent against powdery mildew. If you've ever grown stone fruit, brown rot is a huge problem, especially in peaches. Apple scab is a big problem. So sulfur is very effective at helping minimize or prevent a lot of these problems. So basically, it works by stopping fungal spores from growing and helps prevent the disease before it ever even takes root. So again, it interferes with the processes that fungi need, so it stops those spores from basically being able to germinate, much like copper. So again, you're treating that plant surface, it's creating that protective barrier, and it works really well in warm, dry conditions. So unlike copper that we can start using in humid conditions, let's say toward the end of summer where it's hot and dry, diseases are still present, and that's where sulfur is a great weapon to have in our tool bag. So again, you want to apply it preventatively or at the very first sign of infection, get rid of the diseased tissue and then start using it. You want to cover that plant thoroughly. Again, it's going to work best in dry conditions, so it's not going to be great in wet, humid weather. You want to apply it every 7 to 10 days, but with any of these products, read the label, make sure you're not over applying. And it's very, very effective on powdery mildew. Man, does it work well. So if you've got cucurbits, powdery mildew, elemental sulfur is the product you want to be using. Okay. So again, it's preventative. It's not going to cure existing infections. It can certainly cause leaf burn in hot weather. Anything over 85 degrees, you're putting sulfur on that plant, you're gonna scorch it. Should not be applied with any oil-like products. Okay, so that's just too much for the plant to handle. So if you're using neem oil or some type of an insecticidal oil, and then you're putting sulfur, you're going to toast that plant as well. So it's not very effective in cool or very wet conditions, and it can be harmful to some sensitive plants. So it's reliable, works great for powdery mildew, but again, it's very weather dependent. So if you get it in the right conditions, it works great. A lot of products out there, uh, easy to find pretty much at any big box store or garden center. Some uh, Most of the commercial grade products are going to be affordable. Again, this is a elemental product. It's in large supply. They mine it out of the ground, so it's readily available. So Bacillus subtilis, this is another one of these soil bacteriums, basically, and it's commonly found in soil. And again, it's a biological control agent. It inhibits the growth of various plant pathogens and particularly funguses. So it controls things. Again, we talked about sclerotinia, fusarium. Alternaria leaf spot is a huge problem in a lot of our vegetable crops, leafy greens there. Looks a lot like early blight, but that's Alternaria. Phytophthora root rot, boy, do we see that a lot, especially where I'm at here in Rutherford County. We have heavy clay soils, poor drainage. Basically, those roots are just staying saturated at all times. So Phytophthora root rot is a huge issue, and Bacillus subtilis can help minimize the effect of that. Okay. So basically, it works by colonizing plant surfaces and it creates these natural compounds that suppress the pathogens from really having a chance to cause problems. So it outcompetes those organisms before they can even affect the plant. So again, it's going to work a lot like trichoderma, right? It's going to colonize the plant and leaf surfaces. It's going to outcompete those harmful fungi and bacteria. But again, this can be used on the top part of the plant, unlike trichoderma that's in the soil. It produces natural antibiotics, so it suppresses and slows that disease by producing those antibiotic compounds. And again, it's protecting that plant with a protective coating. So again, you want to apply this again before the disease develops, coating that plant top to bottom. Again, reapply every 7 to 10 days. Works best when used consistently or as a part of a disease program. Okay, so it's something that you can mix in with your regular regimen of products that you're using. Safe to use during the day, but morning or evening is still preferred. Again, it's preventative, not curative. Again, if you have a heavy infestation or a heavy fungal pathogen or disease, it's not going to work. Requires repeat applications to stay effective. Again, performance can vary with, again, if you've got environmental conditions, if it's rainy, stuff like that, it's not going to work well. It's not going to work under high disease pressure. It needs good coverage to take away. So again, it's protecting those plants, but it's most effective when used early and often. Okay, so there's many different formulations out there. These are just a few of them. Here are some commercial grade versions. Again, not the most expensive one we've seen, but uh, certainly not cheap by any means. So in summary, wow, I'm actually maybe going to get done on time. So IPM is vital. What is IPM? Integrated Pest Management. So this is where you're not just relying on pesticides. IPM focuses on long-term prevention, monitoring, identifying pests, and you only want to spray or use a chemical as a very last option. We want to try to exhaust all the other options before we actually have to go in and treat. So you'll hear this word scouting. Scouting is a fancy word for doing what that lady is doing right there and what that person's doing with that leaf. Go out there every couple of days. I do it every day because I just love doing it. I want to look under the underside of the leaf. I want to see if there's chewing damage. Is there discoloration? Do I see eggs? Do I see actual evidence of a disease or an insect? So scout early, scout often. I tell my clients, don't do science in your garden. They tell me, oh, well, I saw this plant. One of these branches started to turn yellow. And a week later, it was completely dead and spreading to my other tomatoes. Take that yellow branch and prune it out immediately. Get rid of it. That's good IPM. That's good scouting practices, right? And also, I want to mention beneficial insects. So these are some of the ones that are voracious predators in the garden. And when I go out and scout, again, I'm not going to spray unless I absolutely have to, because a lot of times when I find, let's say, aphids on a plant, biological control is happening. Nature is taking care of nature. Lady beetles are voracious predators, so that's the adult there, but also that ugly thing there in the bottom left, that is the larval stage of a lady beetle. They will devour aphids. I remember early in my career, I went on a site visit, and an individual called me. They said they have some garden disease and insect issues, but they wanted me to come out. Well, by the time I got there, they had dusted seven dust on their plants. It looked like a beautiful snowfall had occurred. And what I discovered, it killed the aphids, but on the ground was a plethora of beneficial insects. So it didn't matter that they had used it just for the aphids, it killed the beneficial insects. Another one that you'll see is a green lacewing, again, a voracious predator of a whole host of insects, and they have a very unique egg. You'll see these, sometimes you'll see them on windows and doors. The tiny little egg on a little filament, tiny, tiny, tiny. I mean, almost barely able to be seen, but they're out there. So green lacewings, you'll see them flying around your lights on your deck in the summer. You'll see them on your back patio windows. Very, very good bugs to have around. And then parasitoid wasp is another one. So you'll see what this wasp is doing there. It will actually lay eggs in its host. So if you ever find a tobacco hornworm or tomato hornworm in your garden that looks like this guy in the bottom right, leave it in the garden. Because every one of those little white things will be a hatchling. It will hatch out a parasitoid wasp, and they will actually eat that caterpillar when they mature. So typically, I'll put it in a little cup with maybe a little screen over it. I don't want it to let that worm keep feeding on my plant, but I don't want to just smush it or throw it in the woods. I want to keep that plant around or keep that worm around so those hatch out. Again, use pesticides as a last resort. Confirm the problem first. Don't just spray just in case. That's the one thing I hate when people do it. Well, I sprayed just because. No, you want to ID the pest and you want to spray as a very last resort. again, with organic pesticides, timing is really crucial. So it works best when pests are in their early stages, whether it be an insect or disease, and garden the right way. So it starts with good cultural practices. Make sure you're spacing your plants out properly. Make sure you're watering properly. You're not watering overhead at the end of the day where you're creating an environment for disease. Make sure you're giving your plants fertilization. Make sure you're selecting good plants, right? Um, One thing that I always try to preach is airflow and sunlight. If you have a lack of either one of those things, you're going to have problems. So, overcrowding, if you have plants spaced too close together, they're going to lack airflow and sunlight. Diseases and insects are going to be an issue. UT Hort is a fantastic resource. So if you go to uthort.tennessee.edu or just Google search UT Hort, this is a screenshot here in the top right of the homepage. You can click that little vegetable and herb tab, and then it has listings for all of the warm season, cool season, garden establishment. But every one of those publications there has listings of recommended cultivars, and that makes a huge difference. So try to grow varieties that are tried, true, and tested. That are going to have a little bit less susceptibility to a lot of these diseases that we see. So again, in summary, organic pesticides will be a little bit more target specific, so it's very important to choose the right product. And the mode of action is going to be very, very specific. It's either going to have to make contact, it's going to have to touch it, or it's going to have to work biologically in the soil. And again, a lot of these things are going to have to be reapplied. And then the speed of action, really on average, will be a little bit slower. So don't expect to use a lot of these organic products and have an immediate effect. Again, you're relying on the ingestion of these products that disrupts those insects or diseases from being able to survive. Okay? So again, organic products work really great for soft-bodied insects or surface-feeding insects. Certain fungal or soil-borne pests it can control really well. Fungus gnats are one of them, right? Um, Synthetic products, if you're dealing with hard-bodied insects, let's say Japanese beetles, weevils, termites, stuff like that, works great on those, but organic products won't touch it. It works well on persistent or hidden pests. And again, and once you have a large or severe infestation, synthetic products are just going to work better. For a fungicide or bactericide, again, there are some diseases that organic products work great for. Again, we talked about using copper and sulfur and some of those very easy to find products. They work great, but certain diseases are going to be just too hard for these plants to be able to withstand even with organic products. So there's some great resources for you. Again, I talked about UT Hort. Check that site out. It's a plethora of resources. There's the OMRI.org. Again, there is the National Pesticide Information Center. That gives you just some information about general pesticides. EPA site does the same. The Rodale Institute, again, has a lot of great information about organic products and practices. And then the Xerces Society is another one. All right, a couple minutes over, but I did pretty good. So, um, I can take questions if you want to, or however you want to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, so if y'all have any questions, I know we got one in the chat asking about squash bugs. But if y'all have any questions, please feel free to ask now.
Let's see. I'll try to look at the chat here. What was the squash bug question?
How do you kill squash bugs?
How do you kill squash bugs? So squash bugs, if you're going to try to use organic products, you want to kill them when they're in their nymph stage. So squash bugs, they can reproduce rapidly. So if you've ever dealt with these, you know they have the little brown eggs on the backside of the leaf, and then they hatch out. The nymphs will be green or gray. That's the point at which you want to be spraying direct contact. You can use stuff like spinosad, insecticidal soaps, neem oil, things like that will work really well. Pyrethrin. Once they turn into adults, they're going to be very difficult to control. So if you can catch them in that nymphal stage, or just go out there and scout. I'll scout my plants prodigiously, and I'll smash the eggs with my thumb when I see them. So, but you just have to time it out where you're treating them at their immature stage.
Any other
Yes.
questions? See a lot of learned a lot, so that's good.
Well, good deal. Well, again, my email was on that last slide. I'm assuming Cody, you'll share that PDF with them so they'll have that to reference. Again, if you guys have questions, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. And you got Cody as a great resource. I know he can answer your questions as well.
Sure thing. Well, Justin, thank you so much for speaking for us tonight. And I know there's a lot
My
of people
pleasure.
excited about this topic. So,
Well, good deal. I enjoyed it.
all right. Well, thank y'all
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you guys. We'll see you later.